Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's show is going to focus on social media and the role impact it has on Rwandans. From WhatsApp to Twitter to Instagram to Facebook, we're going to look at how Rwandans engage social media with regards to engaging government institutions, and also look at ways in which we can use the social media platforms that we utilize as Rwandans to propel and push forward the brand Rwanda narrative. And joining this show, we have social media enthusiasts with us, and I'm going to start with the lady on my right, Fiona Kamikaze, is a communications specialist and also very big user of social media in Rwanda. Welcome to the show, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Yes, and we're also joined on my left by Danny Rugamba, who is a business manager as well as social media enthusiast. Danny, thank you for honoring our invitation to The Square.
Thank you so much.
My name is Dan Mpisi, host of The Square, and as always, I'm joined by The Square's resident panelists, and I'll start with you, Brenna. We haven't had you here on The Square for 2 weeks. Great to have you back. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dan.
As always, Charlie, great to have you.
Same here, Dan, and Happy New Year to Bana.
Yes.
And Danny and Fiona as well.
Yes. I know you're excited that Fiona is finally seated next to you on live television.
And probably that's the highlight of my, if I may,
Yes.
Dan. I have asked all my friends and family to introduce me to Fiona for the last 2 years. And all of them categorically refused, including Diana.
I did not refuse, did I?
Then all of a sudden we find ourselves on the same platform, and I took the initiative. So nice to meet you, Fiona.
Nice to meet you, Charlie. Like for real, this is the first.
This is the first time we actually, yes, it's the first time we actually.
That's nice.
Yes,
Social media.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Thank you
Power
for
of social
joining
media,
us
yes.
and making Charles' night. His year, I think, should I say.
Thank you very
Danny,
much.
thank you as well for joining us. As we always do before we kick off with the show, we are going to have a recap of midweek highlights, things that have caught the Square resident panelists' attention. And Charles, I know there's something you want to share before we kick off.
We've spoken about this on the show before, and it's around how unsuspecting and too trustworthy that we are as Rwandans, that sometimes we fall prey to people who have ill intentions. There's a time somebody promised people to come to the convention center and get, I think, $790, and people borrowed, begged, and stole to register for that conference, and the guy ended up being a crook. I remember him being arraigned in the courts of law. I don't know what happened to that. Earlier before then, there's another guy who came from Nigeria. He was all over the news promising that he was going to invest $150 million in our potato industry. Got a lot of people extremely excited, disappeared with a lot of bills unpaid. Recently, last week, I think we did have the unfortunate incident of CAX. Guys came, the Creative Africa something. Exchange. We're all excited. Idris Elba is coming, Steve Harvey mentioned it, Akon, and the next time unreliably informed that one of the organizers has been held by police due to unpaid bills, and it happened that it was actually a hoax. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but once bitten, twice shy. I think two things. We need to be fully alert that people take advantage of our naivety. This whole thing of being too nice and thinking that everybody is going to be nice with us, it will not help. But also secondly is, we were discussing this before the show began, is that the efforts that the Rwanda police puts in around Jeraya Mahoro is predominantly around prevention of accidents. I think similar efforts need to be done, and not only by police, but all the other sister organizations that would be prone to fraud, whether it is the central bank, even awareness for us ourselves that somebody is going to come to you with fake products or fake services, and we need a lot of awareness along that front. Yes.
Rana, is there anything you want to add? Very briefly?
I think it was last week. I saw the news around the upgrade of King Faisal. I mean, I know almost everyone is waiting for that upgrade. It should have happened yesterday. But again, it's one thing to have the infrastructure, it's one thing to offer the service. So good luck to Dr. Edgar and the team. Yeah.
Great. So we are going to kick off the show, and the first question really, I want to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media, so to speak. But I want to start with, Fiona and Danny, and then to the rest of the resident panelists. With regards to social media in Rwanda, since we really started using it, a couple of years ago, definitely less than a decade, how do you think it's worked well for Rwandans online with regards to increased accountability and engagement between Rwandan citizens and institutions in solving matters from governance to security, and so forth and so on? And Fiona, I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Dan. I would start by saying that I can confidently say that it has impacted the way we look at things, first of all, and accountability. Some people join Twitter, I'd say 60% of my friends, they join Twitter because they want to raise something. Yeah, because they know people there, people on social media, leaders, institutions respond. Yeah, so I think, and then when they get there, some of them become very active. Some only use it to complain. Some use it to scroll through and see what is Fiona saying, what is Diana saying. But I think it has increased accountability, and our leaders understand that it's like a must to respond, and they're always there. Even those who are not active, they have the app in their phones. They have Facebook. They want to know in case someone asks me a question and I don't respond, what is going to happen. So I would say that there is fear to be held, to be like called out, and then there is also some people who enjoy it. So I think it's some people would say that it's a complaint management tool for some.
I like that, a complaint management tool.
Yeah, and then others use it as a social platform. Like myself.
Like you said. Danny, because I want us to also kick this conversation with some tweets, but before we go to that, I'd like to also hear from you just how well you think it's worked in terms of engagement between citizens and institutions, whether in the private sector or in government.
Yeah, I think the use of social media in institutions is quite commendable. When you look at the efforts that are put in responding to the online audience, making sure that everyone has the answer they're looking for, or even proposing other ways they can solve an issue. And this has been very evident from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram and other different social media platforms. There is, of course, something that you would see that, sometimes when people want to use, when they want to address a problem, they might tag those public officials that they think are going to do something, whether they are relevant to the institution or not, because they believe in the power of that collective complaint or putting together their efforts and complain. So it's very, I think it's very powerful. It's a very powerful platform when it comes to making sure that people are being responsive from those who lead institutions. They know that they're going to provide answers. They know that they're going to contribute to the conversations. And here I would like also to point out the fashion by which it's done. Because when you look at the institutions, say maybe government institutions, you will notice that they all have similar profile photos, which is trying to authenticate them, which is going to be quite a good. If I see the Ministry of Infrastructure and it's somewhat similar to the Ministry of Environment, I know that it's trustworthy. So people know who to address to, they know where to take their questions, and they know which channels they can be responded to.
I'd like to just quickly go and listen to our viewers who have sent in some tweets. We're obviously, for this show, we're just going to use the Twitter social media platform, Instagram, Facebook. I don't think we have time for all that. So our first tweet for today is from Dr. Magnifique. And Dr. Magnifique says that, great topic, we've seen a great impact of social media. We've also seen lots of shortcomings. Sad to see institutions waiting to be reminded about their responsibilities on social media. Freedom of expression is real on the street. attention seeking is also real. I think these are some of the things we're also going to talk about shortly. The next tweet, we just have a couple of tweets before we go back to the show, is from Richard. And Richard states that social media has been vital in getting things in order. It has put people and institutions on their toes. And this is what you've both been saying, Fiona and Danny. Many government officials are watching what is coming on their way and make sure they're able to respond first. Many people, though, come in with emotions. Let's always check facts. This is the second question that I want us to talk about. And the last tweet before we go ahead is from Frank. And Frank says, welcome to #social media, where information travels at a speed faster than light and sound combined, where everyone claims to be the expert, a single source of truth, and where unsuspecting users don't have the skill to discern information. Okay, Frank. So these are kind of loaded tweets about social media. And, it's been said in social media that emotional messages are the ones that go viral. They say that the more visceral the tweet, the more it goes around. So, if you're going to go into the thick of things, what do you think would characterize Rwandan social media? Are we defined by logic? Are we defined by emotion? Especially the last 2 weeks. I don't know if you've been seeing what's been happening, whether it's Miss Rwanda, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's the Me Too campaign. There's lots of stuff that's been going on our social media streets. And I want to open this to the resident panelists, Brenna and Amata. What do you think characterizes Rwandans online, on social media specifically? Bernadette.
Tonight I'm actually wearing an academic hat.
Okay, great.
Because,
as always, actually, I think that's you always.
Because I am actually a scholar on social media, mainly political communication.
Yes.
And one thing I can tell you is, when you go through the Rwandan Twitter sphere, what you'll see is that it's dominated, one, by spiritual content. Most Rwandans...
Spiritual?
Yes, okay. Spiritual content. So most Rwandans will have Bible verses, prayer.
Guilty.
So you'll have Bible verses, you will have them talk about what their pastors are saying, and then, God has, so there's a lot of that. Secondly, Rwandans like to talk about sports. So every time there's football or anything around sports, you will really get the Rwandan Twitter sphere alive, and then there's entertainment. So the showbiz, the likes of, I can't even pronounce her name. Yes, there's that one, and then you have interest in the likes of King James, and so there's a lot of interest in entertainment. And the other one is politics. But the problem with politics, the discussions on social media, Rwandan Twitter sphere, again, you find that they are one-sided. So...
What do you mean one-sided?
One-sided in the sense that what they mentioned, you find that almost all public institutions in Rwanda have a Twitter handle. And what they basically do with that Twitter handle is churn out information all the time. Yeah? And you will have people either liking the picture or retweeting the picture. But in terms of engaging with whatever information that has been provided, that is still lacking. The few that try to engage with the communication that is put out there is more of, oh, well done, oh, this is good. So from a scholar point of view, the engagement is actually not yet happening.
Or it's one way. There's no sort of conversation or debate.
Yes.
To get to more, insightful solutions.
Yes. Because if, for instance, recently the RDB released its investment results, what you'd expect if you look at the responses to RDB, you'd expect that citizens would be interested in the detail of, okay, if it's 10 billion, which companies, how many jobs, the detail of, this investment report. Actually, that is yet to happen. The other thing is that you have institutions that are learning that people are watching them, so they have to respond. Whether they have a response or not, they have to say something, So we have a trend of cosmetic responses where people feel that they have to say something, even when it's unrealistic, even when it's impossible. So
Are
again,
there some tangible examples you'd like to give?
No.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to get into that. I mean, I'm sure there's a department somewhere that looks at social media and you know, this engagement. So, but overall, we can say, if you look at how the Rwandans are engaging, it's promising, because again, it's good that people have alternative spaces to hold officials to account. As media, of course, we've been thrown off balance before.
This is a disruptor.
Yes.
Right? It is.
Completely. I mean, people like, trust me, if Fiona tweets something, she'll be more influential than I, who is a journalist, you know? Yeah. So we are seeing a trend where media credibility has really gone down, you know, as there are several alternatives. And even when you, for instance, you do a story in the newsroom, people will challenge you right there and then. So it's good that we have this kind of democratization. Absolutely. But I think going forward, the discussion we need is how do we actually get meaningful engagement?
Absolutely. Charles?
I think really the bigger issue here is around how we use it, because, and I'll take the point Bana raises around meaningful engagement. I think all this started around the leadership retreat of 2016, I stand to be corrected. And when the president asked the leaders who are there how many of them had Twitter accounts.
But just very quickly to complement what you're saying, I feel like a lot of government institutions are there on toes on social media because our president is an avid social media user.
Thank you very much. And that's exactly where I'm going.
Yes.
So it's to tick that box. Danny mentioned something about the identity of some of these, of all of them. You can easily, they're that predictable because they look the same. And probably they've gone to that class and they say, this is how you have to look. But that's about it. And then you ask yourself, if you have that account as a ministry, why is it that it is the minister who is still engaging on behalf of the institution?
And you've mentioned this several times.
Yes, one of our avid followers who has a blood relationship with one of us here on the table challenged my uncle to just for purposes.
I was wondering.
Yes, challenged one of our leaders as to why he is the one who has to respond on such a trivial matter of his big organization. So it's the how, and to me it just doesn't make sense, because the social media, however much you look at it, and you gave examples of the whole divide, spiritual, blah 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 blah. I'll go to Instagram, and I ask myself, all these socialites and musicians and whatever, if they could only spend half the time they spend dissing their fellow artists, if they could spend half of that time promoting their own music and their own creativity and what they do, can you imagine where we would be? And when it comes to Twitter, it's actually extremely pathetic. So I think we have a huge opportunity that we are not using.
You're not tapping into.
Yes.
Now, maybe if you allow me to jump into that, I think the biggest issue, as you mentioned, is you have the ministers or the heads of institutions responding to the tweets or other different posts. And what I realized that might be lacking is there is no team inside that institution that could help the institution to be responsive.
Actually, I beg to differ. I think every ministry has an active communications or PR department, one. Two, there's the Office of the Government Spokesperson, OGS, that we all know. Yes. An institution that's responsible across the board of how the government of Rwanda communicates, not only with its citizens, but the outside world.
So my question
I will refer back.
My question here is, what are they doing?
Yes.
You don't see any impacts of what they're doing?
I mean, there is engagement which needs to be done, and this is not something that's done monthly. It's something that's done daily. If I want to learn about.
And you're talking as a young Rwandan citizen.
Yes, if I want
on social media for information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Debates.
If I want to learn about what's going on in the infrastructure, I want to have a team in place that's going to respond to me without me tagging the minister to come to the rescue. You know. So what I'm looking for here is what system is in place. Do we have a team that's in charge of social media? Because even though we are moving very fast, even though social media is disrupting the way we communicate and we share the message, I don't think we have set up enough equipment and enough workforce to cover that gap. Because what we need is we need to have people in each and every institution to be able to even follow up and see what's going on. A quick example could be maybe one team can develop an FAQ document addressing the questions that appear very often, and that can be used throughout any time that they have something that's on board. So my simple suggestion is, if we have a team that's there, then it can
or
do
to strengthen
more.
the existing teams, because the teams are there to maybe strengthen them.
Yes, I have two suggestions. One is, if we have a team there, then they need to do more. They need to have trainings, they need to know the trends, they need to know what people really want to hear, or what should be responded to. They also, if there is no team at all, this is the best time to set it up. Because if I want something, I'm not sure if the minister is going to handle 100 questions that are going to come their way. What needs to be done is they need to have people who work together. And it could be, they could have, I don't know, if it depends on the division, it depends on the number of people they want to have as part of the team. But this could also be a chance to work with the private sector. There are so many communications agencies in Rwanda that could facilitate, that could provide people to engage or to even lead up on that, in that division.
I would like to use, of course, Dani's example and Bernard's suggestion of creating meaningful content. Dani's question or suggestion is to have teams, training, and all that. And Bernard mentioned earlier that our government institutions or even other private institutions, what they put out there is, we have done this today. We have done this today. So it's more about we have achievements than this is, we would like to hear from you. What should we do better? And how can we help you? Yeah? What do you want to see on our platforms? So the more you request people to come to you, then you will know what they want, and then you will follow the path they're trying to lead you to. And then there is something that Diana mentioned as the social media prize the emotional over the reason.
I was waiting for us to kind of get back to that whole logic versus reason, because that kind of informs how we engage, even to get meaningful content.
So like I mentioned earlier, most of my friends, they join social media to complain about something or to even because they know I'm very active on social media, be like, can you please tweet this for me? If you've noticed, like towards the end of last year, I started checking I opened my DM and I started checking people who write to me. Most of them, they write to me, hi Fiona, I know you don't know me, can you please raise this for me? Because I know they will respond to you.
As a social media influencer.
So that means that person, this also comes back to Dani's concern, they have teams, they're there. Like you mentioned, every ministry, every government institution has a PR or comms person. But there is Dani who has raised a complaint, nothing was done. Diana raised, nothing was done. Then someone who has 10,000 followers asks something very simple. I would say sometimes not even as relevant as the questions the two people asked, gets an immediate response. So there is that. What are the teams doing? So, of course, like you mentioned gender-based violence, all these people, 95% of them, because of course we have those people who just make noise just to make noise. Gender-based violence, Miss Rwanda, all these things, all these trending topics. Like for the past 2 weeks, we've been like, it's been crazy on social media.
It's been crazy,
So 95% of these people come to social media. Of course, there are those who come to have fun, to laugh at people, to look at memes. But the people who ask this question, who want to know more, there are people who have tried. They've went to these institutions, talked to someone, physically, talked to someone once, written letters, done what, complained, but nothing was done. Yeah? And then when they come on social media, they write because they know someone is going to read that. That's what Denis mentioned, that they're going to tag even people who like shouldn't be tagged in that specific complaint. So we've seen matters like being addressed the next day. Like there was a day that was led by emotional. I met a friend.
It was an emotional.
Yes, I met a former colleague, and I didn't recognize her. Yeah, I literally walked past her, and then she was like, "Fiona, how?" And I looked at her. I couldn't recognize her because she had bleached her skin and changed completely. Yeah, so we talked. I left, and then I tweeted, there should be something done about bleaching products.
You closed down a lot of bleaching businesses.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but you're killing your skin cancer and all that. Yeah. So
you tweeted.
Yeah, I tweeted that, and big people noticed. And then the next day there was a campaign to ban, of course, and to also raise awareness on skin bleaching and the negative impacts it can get to your skin. And there is a lady who was publicly assaulted by her boss, and she tweeted about it. People retweeted, shared, and it got to the president himself. And he responded. I think the guy is in jail now. So there are the different things, ministers, CEOs, like seeing these things. Of course, sometimes, emotion come in because I am hurt. I've tried. I'm exhausted. Let me go to my last resort. Yes. So I think that's where emotion comes in. But most of the time, I'd say it's reason. Yeah. There is reason, and then there is the emotion. But of course, there is the fun part for most of us.
Absolutely. I want to just quickly talk about, unless
I just wanted to weigh in on something small that Fiona just said, and that's how reactionary we are as a society, as people. Especially when it's the biggest extreme is when the president is tagged. He may not even see the tweet, or he may not even have to do anything about it. But the ripple effect that there will be, the reaction that there will be, can sometimes be extremely on the edge.
Tangible examples, please.
No. She just said one about. She said one about the skin bleaching, but about 3 years ago, someone tweeted about the possibility of that street in Kigali being turned into a car-free zone.
Yeah.
4 years later, Kigali is crippled.
Oh, that part of Kigali is crippled.
Yes, that part of Kigali is crippled, and
because it didn't become an active car-free zone.
So we can be sometimes quite reactionary about this. And then the other thing is, again, around this gender-based violence, and I'm extremely sorry to say this, because I have not seen in all this reaction, I did not see, say, the Bar Association of Rwanda, or the Supreme Court, the judicial system, come up to say, yes, there was a very, very good tweet from the minister, but he was like rowing a boat on his own in the middle of the ocean. Hey, guys, to what extent are we going to allow our judicial system take its course? Are we aware that we are staring at a huge problem of subjudice here? Are we trying to say that we actually do not trust our judicial system so much to the extent that the only way we are going to have legal redress is through social media? So the reactionary the reactionary result of social media posts can be extremely devastating.
But I'd like to just quickly say something on that. I don't think, social media is a court of public opinion. I really don't think our judicial, sector is influenced by social media. I think they're doing their job, but social media users have the complete right to tweet what they want, or to report cases on social media, to bring attention, to use it as a platform to bring attention, notwithstanding the fact that legal redress will take course. But I think,
absolutely agree.
I think
very briefly.
Yeah, I think
I absolutely agree.
Very briefly.
Yes.
One, I think the nature of social media is that it's emotional.
And
That's
it's social.
It's social.
Yeah. It's not by robots, it's human beings.
Yeah, when something is not, and this is what we're struggling with in newsrooms.
Yes.
Getting the emotional beat, how you package useful information in a way that is shared. And what you'll see is that people respond to posts or information that expresses emotion. It has to send a certain feeling,
Yes.
That's one. So the solution there is around how the packaging is done. Secondly, if we are beginning to think that social media is becoming the court of public opinion, I think the bigger question is to the judicial system.
Yes.
Why should we be thinking like that? If someone
Do we feel like the judicial system is not doing its job?
Yes, because you
Why
see,
are we going to
currently with the complaints that we're seeing and the harassment, the judicial system has to find a way of making sure that more Rwandans don't feel like they should be on Twitter to get justice. Yeah. So let's deal with the problem and not the consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about this whole issue of emotional tweets or posts or DMs or what have you, all this has led to, fake news or misinformation, so to speak. And in May 2019, the Ministry of ICT and Innovation announced that they were going to devise strategies to regulate social media content. We're in 2020, this was May 2019. We are yet to see what strategies have been put in place. My question to you all is, do you think this will work? Or will this then worsen the curb of misinformation that is not unique to Rwanda, but unique to... We're living in an era of fake news, so to speak. Fiona, very quickly over to you.
Well, I don't think it's a good idea, first of all, because I think it can oppress unpopular opinions and these debates and content and conversation we are trying to create, because we've seen in some places where they've tried this, we have seen so many controversies and people trying to go around it to have other options to access social media without the blockers. So I think if this is something the government is trying to do, they should approach it with caution.
Absolutely.
Yes, because now that very few people actually have social media. Yes, and 80% of the people who have social media in Kigali, it's probably going to change with Connect Rwanda, that is going to see almost the whole country using smartphones. But this is not something they should be thinking about in 2019, 2020. It's something that's which impact is it going to get in the future. For now, they should be focusing on more platforms, educational platforms. These smartphones that they're going to put in villages, are people going to use them to watch things that are not going to help them? Are they going to watch TV? Are they going to learn something? Are there apps tailored to our Rwandan problems? We have very many homegrown solutions. How can we use these smartphones that are going to put in the villages to address these issues instead of focusing on regulating social media? Right now, the people who misuse social media are very few, and there are people who are like, I'd say, how can I say it? People who have time for this. These are people. Even if you put regulations, they're still going to go around. In 2018, the government like we now have a law for cyberbullying and harassment, that is there. But how many cases have our national police received about this? So it's not, I don't think it's something that we should be looking at now.
It shouldn't be a focus.
No, it shouldn't be a focus. That's my opinion.
I entirely agree with her.
All right, maybe something that I would say is regulations are good, but they have to be very well assessed before implementation. And I think maybe I kind of disagree with Fiona.
Finally!
Because for some part, I think it's important to have regulations, but it's also good to practice consultation.
Absolutely.
Because it needs to be, if you want to put regulations that are going to control the social media sphere, you need to involve people who use social media. What kind of regulations do you think should be put in place? Because there are those that are really necessary. There are those, because we have been seeing people who are affected by comments people put out there. You might put out a comment thinking that, because you're just behind the screen, you can type up everything you want, but you know the effect it will have on someone who reads or who it's directed to. Yeah, so that's something that I wanted to say. It's good to have regulations, but it's much more important to consult people. Yeah, I would also like to refer on the emotions part. Social media, as you're saying, is made up of emotions. That's how we capture the stories, and that's what gets people moving. That's what motivates people to share. Even it's part of there's that emotional branding strategy that so many companies use. Nike is a good example. And so what we miss is sometimes we take things out of context. Because on social media, you're able to tailor the message you want to give to people. So I would maybe communicate about a problem that's happening, but I don't offer the full story. Yet the full story is what we really need to look at. So I think part of the regulations, let's look at a way to set up portals or platforms for fact checking. If I say maybe this is what happened to me, or this is what has been going on, we need also to be part of the conversation to actually dig deeper. And because sometimes people expose something very small, but it might be a huge problem. If you report a case about rape, maybe you're lucky enough to report that incident. There's so many other cases that are piling up because this is a person we don't know. So we need to make sure that if someone reports one thing, we need to be alert, or we need to have platforms that help us to see this is the full story about the criminal. Something like that. So that's just one of many examples that we can have.
For fact checking.
Yes, but I think it's very important to also.
I want to tell you a story about fact checking. Early last year, I'd gone on a business trip to Nairobi, and my colleague in the office had helped me arrange a schedule of meetings. One of the places where I was going to have a meeting was at Dusit, and on the day when Dusit was hit. So I get stuck in a traffic jam, and I don't get to Dusit.
Wait, what?
On my way to...
You mean we wouldn't be having this show with you today? No.
On my way to Dusit, the driver is on radio, and we're listening to that, and then they say the place has been hit. So meanwhile, I know I'm running late for my meeting, so I'm trying to get on phone to call the lady whom I was going to meet, to tell her that I'm not going to make it on time. I can't get through to her. So this time as I realize I'm not going to make it, I call my next meeting and I rearrange. In all this process, my colleague at the office calls and says, boss, have you made it to your meeting? I said, no, I have not made it. No, she didn't get to me. She did not get to me. She wrote me a WhatsApp message. She did not get to me. She called me. She did not get to me. and she told the building in which we are, there is New Times on the top, so somehow news filtered upstairs
to the New Times.
Yes.
Okay.
So somebody called me and asked. Eventually, when I got on air, I saw all these messages. I responded. So somebody wanted to run a story that there is a Rwandan who had survived the Dusit attack.
Yeah.
So I said, no, that's not the story. I am fine, and I did not go to Dusit, and I was not at Dusit. Now, but you can imagine the way we're seated, the five of us, the way I will interpret that message firsthand, and by the time it gets to Danny, be like the guy. By the time it gets to Danny, probably the guy went out running on his heels. Yeah, but
that's
yes. So
quick information. So
do you? And I want to pick on Danny. Danny, sometimes people do not have the luxury of being able to find out whether it is actually fake or it's not fake. It is your own personal opinion or intention to say, let me double check this fact. Otherwise, when I was coming, while I was driving here to the show, I was listening to BBC, and the Australian Fire Department was complaining that people are intentionally saying that the reasons for the fire was sabotage. Yeah. And somebody is benefiting from that.
What's the situation?
Yes,
but
yes.
Before I go to Brenna, but I feel, Shadi, like you've answered your own question. The onus should be on social media users.
Yes.
To double check themselves before spreading these falsities, so to speak. Brenna, quickly before
I would like to disagree with that approach. I feel that going back to your earlier question around regulation, I think awareness, digital literacy has to come before regulation, because what exactly are you? What exactly are you regulating? Because most times people find themselves on social media and they don't know even how it works, and they just have to learn how it works. So tell me how somebody like that will identify what is a fake or not a fake. So I feel that the ministry should focus on digital literacy and social media literacy to empower especially young people who are exposed to social media now. To be able to understand, one, what it actually means when you put your life online and what are the risks. And of course, increasingly we're seeing the misinformation and propaganda. And I can tell you, even for journalists who are in the business of information, we struggle with fakes all the time, verification. But we are privileged that
we've been trained,
absolutely, and we are also very cynical and skeptical. So every time you get a piece of information, you have to verify with several sources most of the time before you publish it. Most ordinary citizens don't know that. And the other point is that increasingly we are seeing that most people get information from their social networks, not traditional media. So if your government,
Twitter,
if your government, thank you. Probably Fiona has never clicked on the East African website. She wouldn't bother with it, But if there's something that a friend feels she should know, she'll just take a screenshot and share, So if your government, I think you have to focus on digital literacy, ensuring that ordinary citizens actually understand what it means.
Before going on to
before you regulate.
We're going to quickly go to our social media feed and just go through tweets very quickly because we don't have time, but we really want to hear from what our tweets or our Rwandans on Twitter, in this case, because we say we're using Twitter as a social media platform for the show, are saying. So the first tweet comes from Karera Rehma, who says social media is a great platform for all of us to air our views about governance or personal. But we really need to stop using it to bully, insult, and hurt others' feelings. There surely should be a way to disagree with one another without using abusive language. We should discourage it. Absolutely. And before we go to our next tweet, I think this is something the panel agrees with. And this person is echoing what we've been saying on the show. This is Wisdom Seeker. Andrew says that most users are emotionally driven. That trolling and the blame game has been a vice being embraced lately rather than objective engagement. It's a trend. I definitely, through my timeline, have seen a lot of objective social media engagement for sure. The next tweet is from Emma, and Emma states that basically our response to the information we access on social media is still inadequate. Again, he echoes what the panel has been saying. We still use platforms unproductively. My dream is to see people using Twitter, Facebook to enhance connectivity with the outside world and to improve their career development.
It's cute.
So before we go to the next tweet, this is the meaningful engagement that we've been talking about. This person says, this is from Celestin, who says that, Dana, my appreciation goes to Rwanda police. I totally agree. How they respond to each and every concern tweeted by followers. That shows how impactful social media can play to change community and communicate what is not going well. I definitely think kudos to Rwanda National Police on this.
Can I just make a comment on
Yes.
that one, and related to the comment earlier on other government institutions and how they have a single dimensional way of looking and how reactionary they can be. One of the reasons I believe why Rwanda Police stands out is because they have been very, very deliberate in how they communicate.
Absolutely.
They have even gone to a very large extent of saying it does not necessarily have to be policemen, uniformed policemen who run our communications. And that is paying off. It's paying off in very many different ways. I think I'd like some of what they smoke.
The next tweet is from Hirwa. And Hirwa states that institutions shouldn't fall in the trap of being reactionaries of social media. Less than 0.5% of citizens use Twitter. Fiona, this is what you were saying earlier on. By being Twitter-based, the majority who don't use it are forgotten. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. There's very few of us as Rwandans as a population not only using the internet, but also using social media on the internet.
If I could briefly speak to that, you find that most of the time, of course, because of pressure, most government agencies prioritize communication on social media against, there's a lot of pressure. So the accountability we are seeing, and understandably so, because economies, governance are run by the elite who are on social media. But you still need the masses to keep you in check. And in power. When we have campaigns, people go around the country. The campaigns are not run just on Twitter.
Like former President of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, he announced his candidacy on Facebook. CNN called him the Facebook president. I mean, he used social media. Absolutely,
So. Of course, we know political systems are run by the elite. That's fine. But I think in terms of improving accountability, the same engagement that we're seeing on Twitter, I would be pleased that the Rwanda Police is doing the same, even offline.
Absolutely. Last tweet for the day is from Sylvius, who says that research shows, and we're just going to have time to read one of the tweets, research shows that in strong patriarchal cultures, social media has been given an empowering tool for young girls where they've gained confidence by sharing their pictures and identity when they didn't have platforms to be appreciated. I think this is with regards to gender-based violence that we talked about earlier on. And yes, I would like to just hear from all the panelists on what next. In conclusion, how do you think we can really use social media? The very few, as one tweet said, 0.5% of us. How can we really use social media as an online platform? Online phenomenon, so to speak, to propel the Rwandan brand narrative, whether it's private sector, whether it's government, whether it's civil society. How can we use it to engage meaningfully and propel Rwanda's narrative online? And Brenna, I'll start with you as we
I was just thinking
but as concluding remarks as well.
I was thinking of a Bible verse where they say
spiritual.
Our God is he's slow
to anger.
Yes. So I think the Rwandan Twitter sphere needs to probably read that verse.
I like that.
And be more tolerant and try to be more understanding and patient. Just because you disagree with someone's view doesn't make them a devil, or it doesn't make them, it's just simply that they have a completely different view. Perhaps engage them to understand why they think like that. And maybe if you can engage them, they may shift and understand and come to your side instead of just,
I like the way you use this spirituality to drive home a very, very important point, Brenna. Closing remarks on.
All right, so I have a few remarks.
Please, can you limit it to
absolutely.
Like one remark, one general remark?
All right. Okay, so what I would like to communicate is it's important to engage It's important for whether it being from the public institution to the audience, it's important for them to interact rather than them just receiving information from one end. So it's important for it to be reciprocal. And something else that I quickly want to mention is for the private sector, there is something that I've noticed around restaurants and other different social media accounts from these places where they don't know how to respond to clients. So it's.
I'm glad you touched on the private sector.
That's when we need to engage. That's when we need to bring in trainings. That's when we need to make sure that people who are using those accounts know exactly what they're doing. So it's important also to be very. You need to be very modest, and you need to be very good when you're interacting with an audience.
Thank you. Like modesty, very key word. Fiona?
Thank you. Dana asked us to, I'm going to limit this. Yes. So for personal, for individual users, I would recommend that, I've seen people like, you are cancelled, this is cancelled, he is cancelled. And then that limits debate and tolerance and hearing from both sides. So I think we should look at that, the way we approach the cancel culture. It can, yes, be an end game, but what have you gone through before you cancel something, cancel an institution, cancel a person? This is also something that I thought about today personally, because I've, some of my teachers will be like, I'll never use this, these people are cancelled, but I've not given them a second chance maybe. And the government
like you
and institutional,
the cancel culture.
Yes, exactly. So on the institutional government part, I would recommend that they become more accountable. So this will limit the number of complaints they receive and the crisis management they're going to do, and actually focus on developing content that is going to be educational for people, people to relate with the brand instead of always, there is a brand here we all know, I'll not mention, that is known as Mutwihanganire. So instead of being a Mutwihanganire brand, how can you be a more like a relatable brand? Something I would want to wake up instead of scrolling through Dani's Twitter and see the word of God that he tweets every morning. Before I go to Dani's, why would I want to open my phone and check the square in the morning? What are they putting there? So that's my advice to institutions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. I think we have a huge opportunity with the social media that we are not milking. I'm going to give you one small example of where I work and WhatsApp.
And WhatsApp,
the social media platform. 3 years ago, 40% of our content was jokes, general jokes. 60% was work related. 2 years ago, probably it was same 40%. But only that 20% of the jokes were real estate related jokes. And today, 100% of the content is purely business, and it has improved our performance. What does that tell you about the opportunity that we have with social media? I think it's something that we need to really embrace for our own betterment.
Absolutely. And just also chime in, I think we also really need to use it when we look at, national campaigns, whether it's Visit Rwanda, whether it's the Rwanda National Police campaign, Derayo Amahoro. These are campaigns that I think, especially, I know you hate that word, social media influencers, can use to really drive forward some of these campaigns that are put forward by institutions, stakeholders, and what have you, instead of engaging really in some of the sort of mediocre content that we've been seeing, and also Bena said, lack of meaningful engagement that we have. But I can see some tweets are coming in. Some people are saying, talk about the misuse of YouTube, talk about this, talk about that. Unfortunately, we don't have time for all that. We've come to the end of the show. Absolutely. I think we should have part 2 of the show. Yeah. And please recommend other social media enthusiasts to replace you and Danny.
I have a list.
You have a list. Well, we look forward to hosting them. Brenna, thank you as always. Charlie, thank you as always to our guests, Fiona and Danny. It has been awesome having you.
Thank you.
Most especially to the people who've been tweeting great and insightful tweets that have informed this conversation, but mostly to the institutions that we hold accountable as citizens in terms of engagement and meaningful interaction. I hope they're also watching. Private sector, as you mentioned, to really tap into this tool that really has a lot of transformative potential, social media, to really drive forward the work that this country is doing. So thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee. And to our viewers, keep the conversation going using the hashtag #TheSquareRW, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good night.